I'm Kylie Minogue, and tonight's Australian story is about a dear friend of mine, the one and only Kathy Lette. She's the best social secretary you could wish to have, and I'm lucky enough to call her mine. But going way back as a teenager in the 80s, I devoured Kathy's first novel, Puberty Blues. Didn't everyone? Since then, she's had a glittering career, lightly fictionalising every stage of her life, from marriage to motherhood, divorce and beyond. In tonight's episode, Kathy opens up about her eventful life and why she believes that for women, life only gets better after 60.
All my life, I've always put myself out of my comfort zone, but I always am true to myself, and I've never tried to be anyone that I'm not. The worst thing about a one-woman show is falling out with the cast. You're on notice.
Kathy Lette is an entirely original character. She's one of our most famous expats.
You do get really nervous before you go out.
And I think she's always been of the view that you can think whatever you like of me and I don't really care. And she's practiced that.
Still got the moves from the 70s.
She's a bit like a female Peter Pan. Very positive. She's just a bundle of happy fun.
Hello, my name is Kathy Lette. I'm an author, deranged mum of two, investigative satirist and feminist, which is why it's so great to see so many wonderful women here this evening. Anthropologists say that women laugh more often than men in every culture on the planet, especially in all-female groups. Are there any men in this evening? I've got to warn you guys, you will be ovulating by the end of the evening. And if we can get together and have a giggle and a snicker at the men who are oppressing us, it makes you feel empowered. And that is the language of women. By the time you get into bed, the one thing you're fantasising about is sleep. And then you get the hand. I mean, I think for women, life is in 2 acts. The trick is surviving the interval. The menopause is the interval. Menopause is awful. But once you get through that, it's the best time of a woman's life. No one talks about this. Adventure before dementia, that's my big motto for women my age, is to just, you know, go forth and be fabulous. He's just prodding away at my clitoris as though it's an elevator button. He's running late for a meeting. And I'm like, take the stairs. I came here today as if going to my execution. I was like, no. You know, I don't like talking about myself.
She doesn't talk a lot about personal things, except in the broadest way. She doesn't get confessional.
I'd rather you read my books and glimpse me through the narrative than actually lay myself out bare.
Of course, she's most famous as a writer. She's written many books. She co-wrote Puberty Blues, which had an incredibly transformative effect on the Australian culture.
It's, you know, feminist classic, and I think even though it was written in the 1970s, it's still as relevant now because a lot of the issues that it addresses, unfortunately, are still issues today. Sexist culture and sexual assaults and harassment.
There is a tendency to write her off snidely for the one-liners. But there is a profound seriousness underneath Kathy.
Her novels are always best when she's dealing with her own experiences, whether they've been good or bad.
You no longer win the male gaze. Yes, I do.
And it's liberating, isn't it? I always try and write the book I wish I'd had when I was going through something, to say to other women, you're not alone.
I remember reading your book when I was in high school.
Pretty much, I've cannibalised my entire life up until this point, yeah. Probably the last book I'll write will be Menopause Blues. And so I have Puberty Blues and Menopause Blues. My whole life will be bookended by my hormonal upheavals.
2, 3.
My mother gave me the greatest gift imaginable. 3 sensational, sassy, funny, witty, wise, warm sisters. And don't forget, Mummy's not here to adjudicate.
We grew up in Sylvania, which is in the south of Sydney. Dad was a professional footballer and he used that to pay for his university degree and became an electrical engineer.
Mum was a career teacher, so she went on to become a principal of school quite young. Whose idea was this? I'm going to have a tantrum like I did as a child and throw the board.
Take you. And that's exactly what you would have done.
She was a really good child. Did everything to please me. Everybody loved her. Her teachers always gave me marvellous reports about her. She kept us entertained.
As a teenager, Kath was pretty wild. She was about 13 when she started hanging out with the Surfie crowd at Cronulla. And of course, the attraction was boys. You know, hormones, high school. She was really there for the boys.
Do you remember you were my babysitter? You would sit me down in front of Bill Collins' Golden Years of Hollywood, and then disappear. Go off with your boyfriend to play, I don't know, Scrabble maybe?
What I wrote about in Puberty Blues is absolutely the life that I was living. It was incredibly tribal and brutal.
Shit! Sorry. Have we finished? And that was the courting ceremony in Sylvania Heights, where I grew up.
The boys really saw women as nothing more than something to lie down on while they were having sex. Well, you were a life support system to a pair of breasts. This was my stomping ground. So this is the Puberty Blues, you know, scenario. In that book, the girls are about 13. That's how old we were when we were initiated into the surfy culture, into the top gang, which is what you all aspired to be, part of that world. And I started to push back, I guess, when I was about 15. When I met Gabriel Carey, the great thing about that was that I'd met a soulmate, and that camaraderie is like armour. You know, because we had this great friendship, we could start saying, why should we be treated like this?
You weren't watching.
I was.
Caught this really good wave. I looked up and you weren't watching.
I was. I saw you. Yeah, she was.
Where's my towel?
Here, here's your towel.
It did leave a psychological scar. I mean, I was very mistrustful of men for a long time after the Puberty Blues days. I often, you know, brush over with one-liners and comedy, but no, it was brutal. I was school captain, sports captain, I was a straight A student, which is why it horrified my mother when I left school at 16.
I was very distressed. I really couldn't fathom it. Maybe that independent streak to just show me she could do what she wanted to do.
Well, I had spoof all over my jeans. My mother asked me if I dropped my ice cream. I said, no, Mama.
Gabs and I, we were writing satirical songs.
No, she won't believe it.
We called ourselves the Salami Sisters because we wrote about meaty topics. We started getting a cult following. And from that, we also got a newspaper column. That's when we started writing Puberty Blues.
She said to me, Mum, I'm having a book published and it could be controversial. Would you like me to use a nom de plume? And I looked at her and thought the girl's deluded. So I said, no, put it under your own name, thinking it would never see the light of day. And then, when it did, there was controversy.
First of all, the hips have to be out a little bit like that.
Kathy Lette and Gabriel Carey don't aim to shock. They say their novel, like their weekly newspaper column, is based on accurate reporting.
Just flash little looks at all the boys. Of course, it's always been the same that the boys put pressure on girls to have sex. But in the surface scene, they put that pressure on when girls are very young, 13, 14, 15.
It caused seismic shock around the country. I mean, really, it really polarised the community because young people were saying, yes, that's our life. And older people had no idea what their kids were getting up to.
If you're his chief, you got to sit there and cheer.
Strangers would phone me to say, how could I be teaching other people's children when I couldn't control my own?
It was pretty horrific, and my father was traumatised too. So I didn't go home for quite a while, maybe a year. And then, of course, the movie was made very quickly after that. We did get this unbelievable attention, and it was a lot to suddenly be in the spotlight.
Dad said it's so far, we just about melted our tits off getting here.
Our friendship didn't survive it because it was a very intense time. The fun evaporated and the serious side of life, you know, just overwhelmed us. So we just grew apart.
I think she struggled at that time, but she came through it and it made her very strong. And she is a very strong person.
I met Kim Williams when I was 21, and he ran something called Musica Viva, and he was very erudite. And what I've since realised in my own psychology is because I left school so young, I'm like Eliza Doolittle, I'm always looking for Henry Higgins. And so I met Kim, and he opened the world up to me.
I wasn't Henry Higgins, but I certainly, you know, she became part of my life, and my life was all about music and art and cinema and theatre.
I quickly moved in with Kim. Then I started really writing on my own again, and I still had sort of trainer wheels on because I was used to writing with a partner.
She was very insecure, and she would ring me at work multiple times every day to check on a word or a phrase or a spelling. And for me, I was remarkably patient, and I'm not known for being a very patient person.
We're friends and relatives and neighbours, ladies and gentlemen, who live in the picturesque town of Melanoma.
I was doing a show called Hypotheticals, and I needed a cast. I thought Kylie Minogue. A few days before, I got a telegram saying, Kylie can't make it. You'll have to make do with Kathy Lette. Little did I think I'd be making do with her for the next 25 years.
What he really wants to do is go and stay in the back room of Kathy Lette's beach house. Kathy, you've become a mother, unmarried, of course.
Of course, in Queensland, are we? Yes.
And you're here getting material for your new novel, you're bludging the dole, you're gate crashing.
And after the show, we talked, and we talked till the sun came up, you know. And we fell madly in love. I was obviously married to Kim, but I didn't want to hurt him, and Geoff was going out with Nigella Lawson.
What is it about love? It makes you put aside all rationality and leap into it.
On the day of her 30th birthday, I gave her a surprise party at the Sydney Theatre Company.
I didn't know he was planning this surprise 30th birthday party for me, and I thought, I'll just get past my 30th birthday and then I'll tell him.
When we got home, Kathy was very distressed, and you have that light bulb moment when suddenly you realise something, and I said, who is it? And all was revealed that she and Geoffrey had been conducting a relationship for some time, and she was going to relocate to the UK. I was devastated. I was very, very distressed.
My guilt gland still throbs, but I couldn't help running away with Geoff. It was too big. And Geoff felt the same.
It was difficult, obviously. Kathy left her husband, and I left Nigella Lawson, whom the British tabloids had been insisting I was about to marry. And there we were, a couple of months later, ensconced in London.
They were often construed as an odd couple, even though they weren't really, both Australian, both expats living in London. Although his presentation, of course, is completely different. You know, this sort of magisterial, plummy-voiced QC.
Armed and equipped to go into battle.
And she was just this sort of colourful riot of irreverence.
The British establishment was very snobby about Australians anyway, but they went out of their way to be rude to me. And it was very, very awkward for a while, I must admit. If I looked vulnerable in their company, it was like sharks smelling blood in the water. So, you know, I had to be quite tough.
Literary terrorist Kathy Lette is on the rampage. Armed with her high-powered notebook and poison pen, she has a new batch of victims in her sights. And she's taking no prisoners.
If one of them condescended to me or was rude to me at a party or something, I'd say, oh, what a great line. Just let me write that down. I'm going to give it to a real bitch in my next novel. And when they could see that it wasn't affecting me, they sort of started to back off.
In dealing with the criticism that she faced, and I think deepened and broadened her perspective as a writer.
I don't think it was bad for the brand to be the reckless down under, irreverent wit. I think that was probably quite good for her brand. And her career really, really took off.
Kath and Geoff always wanted to have children, and when she moved to London, it wasn't long until she was pregnant with Julius.
Jules was born in November 1990. In fact, I was pregnant on my wedding day. I was wearing control top pantyhose to try not to show the bulge. And then my daughter Georgie was born in 1993, 2.5 years later.
Say, I'm not hypothetical, I'm real.
Jules was an amazing baby. I mean, he talked early, he walked early. I mean, Geoff and I kept looking at each other thinking we had this little genius on our hands. And then at about 13 months, it was as though his computer crashed. He lost his language, he retreated into himself, and he was 3 when he got the diagnosis of autism.
Kathy came into motherhood as someone who'd taken life pretty lightly and suddenly had a child who had complex needs. And she gave him terrific support.
You going to play for Australia or England? America?
It was a very expensive, long drawn out, incredibly anxious time of my life. You know, autism is a daily battle, especially when they're small.
School was really tough for Jules. And I was beating up boys that were 2 years older than me because they were picking on him in his class.
One day, when he was 9, he came home with a sign sticky taped to his back saying, "Kick me, I'm a retard." You know, he's saying to me, the kids are calling me a retard. What is a retard, Mum? Am I a retard? I mean, as any mother, you might as well just rip your heart out of your chest and stomp on it. But how do you protect them all the time? You can't.
A lot of people believe that everyone with autism acts the same or has the same form of autism when people's autisms are different.
This is an audition for Coronation Street. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, no, it's a big show in Manchester. It's been going for a long time.
When people ask me, you know, what advice I could give them for their autistic child, I would just say, indulge their obsessions. I'll play the mum, and you're playing the... My own son wanted to be an actor. I couldn't see it. Ali or something? Ali, yeah. And I think you're a doctor. But I enrolled him in acting classes, and I used to go and watch him, and I'd think, you're really good. I just thought, because we're family...
Michelle, we're not family.
I'm your mum.
You gave birth to me, but you're not my mum.
But you're my flesh and blood.
And that's it. There's nothing else.
Please.
Being an actor is very exciting. It's very interesting playing someone who isn't you. Maybe you should go back to Dr. Gaddis for your appointment. It wasn't easy, but I always thought I was quite a convincing actor.
Okay, south speed.
And action!
He won some awards, and then he got cast in a little film, and then he got cast in a big BBC show called Holby City. It's a medical drama.
I didn't do anything. The guy I played, Jason, had a different type of Asperger's to me, I would say.
We'll cover your line in a separate shot.
He took on a lot more responsibility than I ever could.
For so long, autistic people haven't been allowed to tell their own stories.
Yeah, cool. So you're Donna, is this Mia's?
You know, Jules is really breaking down those barriers. And he's done so well.
It was handed in at lost property.
No.
He gets more recognition than either of us. We walk down the street, people run up to him and see him as Jason from Holby.
Stand by for a seat, guys.
Raising Jules has made me a more compassionate person, much more compassionate. And he's also taught me to, you know, turn negatives into a positive. He's taught me not to judge people, to sort of understand how complex and diverse humans are.
Well, you're looking pretty good for 56.
Mate, 46.
Tennis and acting are my two passions, I think.
Andre now is running.
I've been playing since I was 4, so been following the big tournaments for a long time.
Been working on my one-hander.
Jeepers, that's good.
I'm trying to get it like yours.
And he's the only person I know who knows every Wimbledon score from the get-go, and I mean every score, ever.
That must have reminded you of 1987. 766275.
Surf. He knows all the stats, he knows all the data and all the dates. You win some and you lose some in tennis, and Jules is quite happy to remind me of the ones that I lost, which is part of life, I suppose.
That's great. Thanks, Pat.
Kathy is genuinely a collector of celebrities and an avowed name dropper. But not in a show-off sense, it's just part of her chemistry.
She's got this kind of infectious warmth which is not made up. She's always reaching out to people, I think. She never feels or seems closed, either to people or to possibilities.
I don't want to go for gold in the name-dropping Olympics, it sounds like that, but I'm just trying to paint you a picture. Salman Rushdie loves Scrabble, Kylie loves Scrabble, so we'd have Scrabble nights where they'd be competing.
We often describe Mum's house as the unofficial Australian embassy because she's had pretty much everyone to come and stay, from political refugees like Julian Assange to literary icons like Tom Keneally.
She has the gift for life and for friendship that few writers have. Many writers are too narcissistic to go on cultivating friendships. If Kathy likes you, you're never going to escape.
The hard thing about being married to a human rights lawyer is you could never get the high moral ground. Because when I used to say to Geoff, "Oh, come in here and change his nappy," he'd be like, "Well, I'd like to, but I have 350 people on death row in Trinidad." What could I say? Although after a year I started saying, "Oh, let them die."
Geoff will be the first one to say that he's workaholic, and he worked really full on right through our marriage, so the burden did fall on me. And it just got a bit too exhausting.
I'm sorry that I didn't spend more time with family at particular times, but it's something that you realise afterwards.
Geoff and I separated, probably now it's been about 5 years, I think.
It was as friendly, I think, as divorces can be, and we're still good friends. We have 2 children, and as people eventually find out, children are forever.
We still hang out, the 4 of us. We even went on holiday last year, the 4 of us, for a few days. So in some ways, not much has changed.
Most divorces now are initiated by women. Once you're through the menopause, what happens to you hormonally is that your estrogen levels drop, which is your caring, sharing hormone, and your testosterone comes up. So for the first time ever, you get a little bit more bolshy, a little bit more selfish, a little bit more like a bloke, actually, and you put yourself first. It's so interesting being here at Cronulla again. and remembering when I was here as a teenager, and of course I was so anxious and so nervous about how I looked. And to be here now, you know, post-menopause, feeling so liberated, so at ease in our skin. In our double skin, yeah. It's a really nice bookend to my life, you know, that it's... It is the best time of a woman's life. It's liberating not to be in the male gaze. I would say to women, you've put yourself second your whole life.
But actually, it's a bit of a Cronulla face.
You know, once your kids have left home, once you're starting to think about retirement, this is the time for you. So, you know, carpe the hell out of DM. Wear whatever you like, do whatever you like, and do whoever you like. That's what I would say. My boyfriend's from Derry, and he grew up in the Troubles.
A wee cup of tea. A wee cup of tea.
I'll just go into Nigella mode for you. Don't get used to it, though.
We had what they call, in the movies, a cute meet. He was in the park practicing bark under a tree. And I was walking by, and I thought, that's the most beautiful music I've ever heard.
She gave me her number, and I didn't ring. I literally knew nothing about Kathy. And then when we did meet up, though, I was absolutely blown away because she's a person who has got so upbeat. That's a wee Irish tune, I remember that.
Oh, I love this, yeah.
Every day is a joy for her, and I get contact highs from her passion for life.
I love those melancholy, poignant chords.
It's great that she's got a partner at this stage of her life. She likes to keep him out of the limelight. He's not even mentioned on her Wikipedia page. Mum is Australia's best-selling author. I mean, she is Mrs. Australia. I mean, the Australian national treasure, darling.
I think I'm more of a buried
along
treasure.
With Geoffrey Robertson, you know.
Buried treasures, waiting to be discovered, dug up.
While I'm saying carpe the hell out of DM, have fun, I will never actually be able to cut the psychological umbilical cord that keeps me tethered to Jules because he needs me.
So, yeah, Peter Pan, I should get the little outfit with the little green.
The big worry, too, when you have a child with special needs is what are they going to do when you're no longer around? So my big aim now is to just get Jules completely independent, self-sufficient, with support.
Well, why not, darling? Only live once.
When I go back to London, I've got a flat in Holborn, so I'll be trying to work on my independent skills there. I sometimes wish I had more friends. And a girlfriend.
Hi, everybody. Hi. Thanks for doing the salad. It's been so long.
I would love to boomerang back to Australia. My favourite people are here, my sisters are here, my mum's still here. The trouble is, Jules has his career there. At the moment, I'm trying to spend about 6 months of the year in each place.
Which one have you made that?
The umbilical cord of one's birth home is always there.
Blessed woman at 90 to have such a wonderful family.
Oh. We love you.
In terms of whether she would have been as popular as a writer had she stayed in Australia, I don't think she would have. I think she needed to get away.
Every time you read a novel about a woman my age, she's either a victim, you know, or dying with unfulfilled hopes in her flat and gets eaten by the cat. You know, I want to write stories about women my age where they're the heroine and they're having adventures and it's life-affirming. And I'm going to call it I Don't Give a Shit Lit, because at this age, you don't care what anybody thinks about you. I'm hoping this term catches on.
Red hot mamas.
I think she's one of those people who has relished every phase of life, even the bits that have been really hard. I mean, she's kind of a poster woman for making the most out of life, I think.
I think we might have a little bit of bop on stage. Who wants to come up and dance with me? Sydney's Central Railway Station, where the city meets the bush. I came from Murrurundi to the Big Smoke. That's my story. Hello, I'm Caroline Jones, and I look forward to bringing you some great Australian stories. I suppose I've spent most of my life finding out what makes people tick, what they have a passion for, how they came through the hard times. Hello, I'm Caroline Jones. This Australian story takes us to the small town of Guyra.
Hello, I'm Caroline Jones. In recent years, hello, I'm Caroline Jones. Stevie Wright, hello, I'm Caroline Jones. When the ABC covered a story about a young